Guardianship Reality, which contains 2 books. The first part was discussed earlier, which is about children, best interests of the children. Now I want to focus on the elderly, which, when you become 80, 90 years old, you become like a child again. I'm 82. I'm getting there. According to a recent study, the great majority of all deaths throughout the country, especially in New York, from the virus, were vulnerable persons. That means the elderly. We'll get into that a little later. So, I co-authored this book with my friend Fernando Gutierrez. A few statistics. Nationally, 1 million citizens currently reside in senior care facilities. That's going to double by 2030. More than 65% of the cost of these facilities are paid by patients and their families. Medicaid, which is going bankrupt, currently pays 73% of the cost for the poor living in skilled nursing facilities or assisted living facilities. 73%. Now you have to prove that you're poor. Some people abuse this system. That's why Medicaid is on the ropes. In terms of training, the elder care guardians, which are called professional guardians, need 40 hours of formal class and 8 hours additional every year. They spend less time in court, except when needed, when the judge calls them in for something. They visit their patients, elder care clients, at least once a month, or they should. And sometimes, if the patient is really sick, you should visit them weekly or daily. They're required officially to report about everything concerning the patient once a year. That's not good enough, in my opinion. The court defines their authority and what the limitations are. And they're paid out of the client's assets, if they have any assets. I did not take a dime since I was retired, and I was well off. But, many young guardians coming into the system, they think they're going to make a lot of money. But really, it takes at least 2 years to get enough clients with assets to make a living. So they better have another job. Again, we must look at the training and legal and other differences between elder care guardians. There's never enough training. Most professional guardians know very little about the medical field. In fact, some of them don't even know how to do first aid. There's an alternative to guardianship. It's called a durable power of attorney, DPOA. The good thing there is that it continues after the patient is determined to be incapacitated mentally. Now, the patient or client should outline specifics in the DPOA about their placement, medical decisions, financial management. Every detail should be initialed and witnessed. If the DPOA includes financial powers, signatures must be absolutely witnessed and notarized. Now, a healthcare proxy is somebody else. That's a specialist who, when you're very, very sick, old and sick, your family is not capable of making decisions for you. That's in your best interest. You don't want children and your wife or whoever squabbling over healthcare. You want to find a person who knows what they're doing. Fernando, my co-author, is my healthcare proxy for myself and for my wife because he has 10 years of experience. And so what does the proxy do? He has the right to withhold or withdraw life-prolonging procedures. And that's based on clear and convincing evidence. If he doesn't have clear and convincing evidence, he should consult doctors. If the person's wishes are unknown, the proxy may make decisions to withhold or withdraw life-prolonging procedures. That is based substantially on it's more probable to be true than not true. The patient would have made that decision if they were not mentally incapacitated. Always get a second opinion, or a judge should be asked to intervene. Proxies have difficulty obtaining Medicaid approval since bank balances are required. They have no access to the client's bank accounts. They handle only the health care, not the financials. Typical court-granted guardianship powers. The judge will determine the residence, or give the guardian the power to determine residence, consent to medical and mental treatment, the power to select doctors and request referrals, decisions regarding client's social environment, financial decisions regarding his or her assets. In reality, if the patient is mentally incapacitated, and it requires two doctors to determine that, it may be impossible to explain anything to the patient. So they better document very carefully. So here's a summary of the guardianship decisions that have to be made: the placement, the healthcare, the social, and the financial aspects. In the health needs, he can hire and fire the doctors. He can oversee the treatments, the medications, and therapies. And if the patient is in the skilled nursing home, he meets with the staff at the skilled nursing home every quarter. It's required. And he interrogates them about their treatments, their medications, whether they gain weight, lost weight, etc., their therapies. And so the guardian is an overseer. He verifies that they're getting the proper treatment. Now, physicians have an ethical duty of benevolence to do good to others and non-malfeasance, to avoid harm. If harm is unavoidable, minimize it. Physicians do not have the right to end the life of a patient. Do not resuscitate. Orders must be approved by a judge today. Although I don't know why, because he has no medical experience. And he has to consult a doctor anyhow. But that's the new rules, at least in Florida. Some group complained about DNRs, do not resuscitate, being abused. And so they instituted this new regulation. Managing healthcare. According to the Institute of Medicine, at least 40,000 deaths were due to diagnostic errors recently. That's based on a survey, 440,000 deaths. Almost 10% were due to diagnostic errors. That's why you need a second opinion frequently. It is estimated that 28% of all hospitals make serious mistakes. I had a patient who went in because he had trouble breathing to a hospital, and he came out with MRSA infection. And a few weeks later, he died from MRSA. The disease he caught in the hospital. So there's a lot of errors made by doctors and nurses. Reportedly, Amazingly, 25% of all deaths due to the coronavirus in New York were in skilled nursing facilities or assisted living. In New Jersey, it was 35%. That's indefensible. Terrible. So that's because people go into these nursing homes and assisted living facilities without masks, without clean clothing, and they bring the disease into the nursing home to the most vulnerable people out there. In addition, I will predict that many hospitals and doctors will fail financially because they had to give up a lot of their for-fee services until recently. So they're financially in desperate situation. Now, many of these facilities, including the hospital, use lower pay minorities to service the elderly. Decision-making should always be based on informed consent or substitute judgment, especially when the patient lacks mental capacity. Premature discharge from the hospital happens very often. Hospitals are not allowed to discharge a patient who does not have a receiving facility, such as a home or skilled nursing facility or assisted living. And you can appeal the discharge by contacting an organization known as KeyPro, Keypro. So, in the social realm, decisions are who's going to be the patient's roommate. If you link up an older person with a younger patient with an older patient, they may be incompatible. What activities will they have? Continuing education. What hobbies will they be allowed to participate in? These are all important factors. When we go to the skilled nursing facility every quarterly, there are a dozen things that the guardian should ask. They should look at the admission sheet, legal documents, get the physician's progress notes and orders. These facilities will often try to prevent you from getting access to these documents. You have to fight for it. Examination notes, nurse progress notes, consultations, physical history, laboratory results especially, etc. Weight change. Did they increase or decrease in weight? Care plan conference notes. I had a patient who gained 50 pounds in 6 months. So I said, why is this? They said, well, she orders out pizza and whatever she wants. I said, well, what are you doing about that? Well, she has her rights. We can't stop her from ordering out. Well, I said, well, you have to. Otherwise, she's going to get really sick and die. So I controlled her money to reduce so she cannot order out anymore, and got the doctor to sign on to a diet that will help her to lose weight or control her weight. This is what a guardian should do. He should really care for his patient and demand to see the records. Let's talk about some case examples. Mona, that was the 52-year-old woman who gained 50 pounds in 6 months. She was given to me as a successor guardian by her mother, who couldn't handle her, who abandoned her daughter. I don't want anything to do with her. Her mother put her in a lockdown facility where there were a lot of crazies. First thing I did when I got official approval from the judge, I took her out of that lockdown unit. I got her the mental and medical treatment she needed. Now, she lacked assets except Social Security. It took months to find an attorney to handle the case because there was no money involved. Attorneys don't like to work for free. But I found somebody. And was officially appointed, actually months after I took over the case, if truth be told. All guardians are required to find a successor guardian before they can bail out, before they're allowed to resign for sufficient reasons. The lawyers, however, the attorneys, can resign without sufficient cause. And then, if they resign, and I had an attorney resign on me, it takes months to find another one. And if you can't find one, you can't file the papers. So that's a catch-22. I had another patient who was a traumatic brain injury. This was a doctor, almost 20 years as a brain specialist. Well, he needed a brain specialist because he crashed his motorcycle and his injury was very serious. They had to cut out part of his frontal lobe. He was a highly skilled neurologist. His career was over. He's a young man. He had to learn to walk again and talk. Now he runs and he talks too much. Okay. He acts very normal. In fact, if you had a conversation with him, you would think he was fantastic. He still remembers all his medical training. In fact, he diagnosed my wife one time. It's incredible. Incredible case. Anyhow, I got him proper therapy. He learned to walk again. And the shame of it is he's in there with 70 and 80-year-old people in a skilled nursing home for the rest of his life. So, financial decisions. In his case, I set up a trust where his Social Security money goes directly into the facility to pay for his housing, his food, and his medical treatment. I set up a irrevocable trust. It was automatic. I found an attorney to do that who did it for free. That's amazing. So for the rest of his life, everything he needs is paid for. So let's talk about fraud and exploitation. To prevent that, you establish a pre-need guardian early before you become incapacitated. Someone you trust. Or, as I said earlier, you set up a durable power of attorney. You can establish a revocable or irrevocable trust. And you can select a pre-qualified or qualified healthcare surrogate who you trust, who you know will take care of you. Now, many patients, in fact, my co-author's patient, after 5 years, she developed dementia and started accusing him of fraud. Of course, she didn't know what she was talking about, but be that as it may, he was unfairly accused of fraud and abuse. It took him 2 years to clear his name and lots of money for the lawyer. But he was found not guilty. One can very easily be accused of exploitation. let's make some conclusions. Standard training course is not sufficient, especially in critical ethical and healthcare aspects of guardianship. Many guardians don't know very much about healthcare. Some of them don't even know about bioethical, how to make bioethical decisions. It's highly recommended that you have mentoring during your first year as a guardian before accepting any cases, or at least 6 months. Piggyback with somebody else. I was the shadow of Fernando for about 6 months. He took me around to hospitals, to all kinds of doctor appointments. I took notes, and I became more qualified as a result. In reality, there's countless laws, too many rules, too many standards, which will inhibit people from becoming guardians. But you got to live within those rules and standards. Always seek advice from medical and healthcare professionals. Again, document. So, this was only a small snapshot of our 5-star book. To order the book, please go to Author House or Amazon. And I thank you for your patience.